Just as I was about to take out my black card to sponsor the poor college girl, the girl, who had been blushing shyly a moment ago, suddenly became cold and dignified. The next second, a barrage of comments flooded before my eyes. The comments read, "The female lead has been reborn. She's back at the beginning of everything. This time, she can finally make up for the regrets of her past life with her childhood sweetheart. In the previous life, if it weren't for the second male lead flaunting his wealth and standing between them, the main couple wouldn't have missed out on a lifetime together." I looked up and met Willow's disdainful gaze. She only teared up when she looked at her childhood sweetheart. Chapter 1. Being close to Willow. I could clearly sense the shift in her aura. It was the kind of grace that only long-term financial privilege could cultivate. There was no way it belonged to a so-called poor college girl. She glanced at the black card in my hand with obvious disdain and said coolly, "I told you. I'll figure out my tuition fees myself. I don't need you to insult my dignity with money." After saying that, she walked right past me and into Makoto's arms. Her sweet, blissful expression made it seem as if the whole world had vanished, leaving only the two of them. Gazing up at Makoto with deep affection, she softly said, "Makoto, after everything, I finally realize the one I've always loved is you." The people around us clicked their tongues in reaction. The comment barrage became even more intense. Some comments read, "I love this. The female lead confessed her feelings to her childhood sweetheart the moment she was reborn." Others mocked, "That villainous second male lead must be dumbfounded now." In the past life, the female lead only accepted his black card and agreed to be with him because she needed tuition money. Now that she's reborn, no amount of money can save him. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the words floating in the air. Slowly, I pieced together the truth. I was the second male lead they were talking about, the arrogant, wealthy villain who had used money to force the female lead into a relationship. And Willow, she had been reborn. In the past life, I fell in love with her at first sight when we entered university. When I found out she couldn't afford tuition, I immediately took out my black card, offering to pay for all 4 years of her college expenses. On one condition, she had to be with me. Willow hesitated for a long time before finally accepting the card, agreeing to my terms with reluctant humiliation. She buried her longtime crush on her childhood sweetheart deep in her heart. She resented me for tearing her apart from Makoto, hated my arrogance, sensitive yet fragile, feeling wronged in our relationship. Yet, she had also grown accustomed to a life of luxury and wasn't willing to lose me, her financial safety net. 2 years after graduation, Makoto announced his engagement. That buried love she had suppressed for years could no longer be contained. Willow actually put on a wedding dress and rushed to Makoto's wedding to stop it. But on the way, she got distracted and collided with a truck. She died on the spot. Now, after being reborn, the very first thing she did was confess her long-suppressed love for Makoto, making up for her past regrets. I frowned. What the barrage was saying actually did align with my character, George. But as they put it, Willow had taken so much money from me. I had even turned her into an A-list celebrity in the entertainment industry after she graduated. So what if she had to bow and scrape a little before her sponsor? So what if she had to obey me in everything? Wasn't that only fair? Did she really think she could have her cake and eat it too? Expecting me to beg her to spend my money? I let out a cold laugh and tossed the black card to a passing girl. I said, "Willow, who said I was going to pay for your tuition? The person I wanted to help was her. Hey, beautiful, want to be my girlfriend?" Chapter 2. The barrage of comments exploded with discussions. Wait, what's going on? Did I miss something? Why did he give the black card to someone else? Girl, taking the black card is pointless. The second male lead only loves the female lead. He'll never look at another woman for the rest of his life. This is just a strategy. He's playing hard to get, but the female lead won't fall for this trick. Willow's body stiffened. Freshly reborn, her eyes flickered with disbelief and confusion, as if she hadn't realized that this timeline had already deviated slightly from her past life. But true love was right in front of her. The fear of death and the joy of rebirth still clouded her thoughts. She didn't dwell on it too much. I immediately invited the girl holding my black card out for dinner. The semester had only just begun, and I wasn't too familiar with the faces around me yet. As for Willow, I had only overheard some classmates whispering about how she still hadn't managed to scrape together her tuition fees. That was why I had pulled out my black card and asked if she was interested in being my girlfriend. After all, her innocent and sweet face fit my taste so perfectly that I acted without a second thought. Maybe, in my past life, I truly did love Willow, but in this life, before anything even had the chance to begin, it had already been cut off at the root. I had plenty of money. I was the only heir of the Wang family, the wealthiest family in the country, a prince born into fortune and power. I could have any woman I wanted. Why should I waste my time fixating on one single flower? Love was just love. Who cared who I dated? And this girl holding my black card? Well, her face was just as much my type. I chose the most upscale restaurant near the university. Frowning slightly, I flipped through the menu before tossing it to the waiter. Bring out all of your signature dishes, I ordered. The waiter practically skipped away in delight. Just then, the entrance to the restaurant swung open, drawing everyone's attention. I turned to look. It was the reborn female lead, walking in arm with her childhood sweetheart, Makoto. In the past life, Willow had indeed been well nurtured by wealth. Her table manners and dining etiquette were impeccable, a perfect picture of an aristocratic lady. She kept glancing in my direction, eyes filled with unrestrained contempt. It was obvious she had convinced herself that I was here waiting for her, that I simply couldn't let go of her no matter what. She was also certain that the only reason I was dining with another girl was to make her jealous. With grace and elegance, Willow casually ordered 7 or 8 of the restaurant's signature dishes. Then, smiling happily, she said, Makoto, I love the food here. You'll definitely love it too. I want to travel to so many fun places with you and try all sorts of delicious food in the future. Makoto's smugness was practically radiating off him. He threw me a condescending glance before raising his voice on purpose. Oh, by the way, Willow, since today marks the first day of our official relationship, I have a special gift I've been preparing for a long time just for you. His face was filled with undisguised pride. The barrage of comments buzzed with excitement. Makoto and Willow have been childhood sweethearts since forever. He had planned to give her this gift after they got into the same university together as a love confession. So when George pulled out his black card, Makoto was absolutely livid. His teeth were practically grinding in rage. The way he's looking at George, it's like he thinks the guy stole his wife. But, in my past life, when Willow agreed to be my girlfriend, she never mentioned Makoto at all, did she? The next moment, Makoto dramatically pulled out a small, simple ring box. Willow's face lit up with excitement. The barrage went wild. OMG, their first meeting after rebirth is way too sweet. The plot is progressing way too fast. I can't even keep up with how fast things are moving. Guess what's inside that box? I remember in the past life, George gave the female lead a Bulgari bracelet worth over $1 million. Makoto might not be as rich as the villain, but I bet his gift is something from the heart. The box sat in his palm, light as a feather. Willow eagerly opened it. Inside lay a simple silver ring. Makoto grinned. Willow, I had this custom made at a shop, waiting for the day we got into the same university so I could confess to you. I even carved I love you on it by hand. What do you think? Do you like it? Chapter 3. The once lively barrage of comments suddenly fell silent. Had I not known Willow had been reborn, I might have believed she would truly cherish this gift, perhaps. For 18-year-old Willow, this silver ring was indeed a precious token of affection, simple yet beautiful. But beneath her youthful exterior now resided a soul that had lived 24 years, a woman who had indulged in the finest delicacies, adorned herself with diamonds and luxury, and collected designer goods like pebbles by the river. Just a few hours ago, before she died in a car accident, Willow had been driving a Maserati from my garage, the feel of a premium leather steering wheel in her hands, compared to the rough, hand-carved wooden box now in her palm, was worlds apart. I chuckled and reached into my pocket, pulling out a bracelet. I had picked it up earlier today at a luxury boutique. A casual purchase. Since Anna was now my girlfriend, I figured I shouldn't favor one over the other. Pushing the delicate jewelry box toward her, I said, "Today is our first day together. This is my gift to you. See if you like it." The barrage instantly reignited. Wait, wasn't this bracelet supposed to be for the female lead in the past life? Why is he giving it to someone else? He's obviously still playing hard to get, trying to attract the female lead's attention. Trust me, he won't last long. Right. The second male lead is completely losing control of the situation now. The diamonds on the bracelet sparkled brilliantly under the light. Anna, still reeling from the excitement of receiving the black card, was now hit with a second surprise. She covered her mouth with both hands, her fingers trembling as she reached out to touch the bracelet. But just as she was about to make contact, Willow's sharp voice rang out, "Don't touch it, that's mine." She cut herself off mid-sentence, swallowing the rest of her words. I understood. She wanted to say that this bracelet belonged to her. The barrage had mentioned that in the past life, she had worn this bracelet for 6 years, cherishing it dearly. Every night before bed, she would carefully take it off, wipe it down, and place it gently in its box. But that was the past. Now, she had her childhood sweetheart, her true love, Makoto. Surely, she no longer cared for such worldly possessions. Makoto's face darkened as he gritted his teeth and scoffed. "Does having money make you so great? What's the big deal? A stupid bracelet. Can it compare to the silver ring I made with my own hands?" Then, as if seeking validation, he turned to Willow and asked, "Willow, don't you agree?" Willow finally snapped out of her daze, forcing an awkward smile. "Makoto is right," she said. The two of them tried to regain their composure and were just about to continue eating when Willow's phone suddenly rang. The cheap knockoff phone she used had poor sound quality. But even from a distance, I could hear the cold, mechanical voice on the other end. "Miss Lou, your mother's hospital bills are due for renewal." Chapter 4. In an instant, Willow's face turned deathly pale. The barrage of comments exploded in panic. "Oh crap, I almost forgot. The female lead's mother is seriously ill and in the hospital, waiting for life-saving money. I remember in the past life, the second male lead just threw $1 million into the hospital, and the surgery went smoothly." Some sighed. No way, the main couple just started their romance. And now the second male lead is going to use the female lead's mother's illness to force her into a relationship again. Why does the second male lead keep haunting her like a ghost? Another comment appeared. "Oh no, he's looking at the female lead. He must think this is his chance to approach her." I recalled what I overheard from some classmates earlier. Willow's mother had been battling cancer for years. Her family had exhausted all their savings and was drowning in debt. I quickly turned to Anna and asked, "Your family doesn't have anyone sick, do they?" Anna shook her head. "No, no one is sick." Meanwhile, after finishing her phone call, Willow and Makoto got up, ready to rush to the hospital, only to be stopped by the waiter. "Excuse me, you two haven't settled the bill yet." A wave of laughter rippled through the restaurant. In the past life, with the Wong family behind her, Willow could walk into any high-end restaurant and be warmly welcomed. The owners would smile obsequiously and assure her she didn't need to pay immediately. She could settle the bill whenever it was convenient. But this time, she hadn't been reborn for long. She hadn't yet adjusted her lifestyle. The waiter had already placed the bill on the table. 1,280 yuan. Makoto broke out in a cold sweat. Yet this amount wasn't even half the price of the wine Willow used to drink in the past life. Instinctively, she reached into her bag, intending to pull out a black card, only to grab at nothing. Right, she was 18 again, young, beautiful, and broke. Not only did she not have 1,280 yuan, she didn't even have 80. The waiter maintained his professional smile. Willow pressed her lips together, then turned to Makoto. Her meaning couldn't have been more obvious. Makoto immediately tensed. "Willow," he hesitated, "I only get 1,500 yuan a month for living expenses. This meal alone costs 1,280. How am I supposed to survive the rest of the month?" Willow frowned. "Isn't it normal for a guy to treat his girlfriend to a meal?" Makoto scowled. "How was I supposed to know this place was so expensive? You didn't tell me in advance." "If I had known, I never would have agreed to come here." His face twisted with distress. No matter what, he simply refused to pay the bill. And so, less than an hour into their fresh relationship, the young lovebirds faced their first hurdle. I took out my card at the perfect moment and called out, "Waiter." Willow turned her face away in disgust, as if in the next second, I would start clinging to her again, hounding her like an obsessed fool. Reborn. She wanted nothing to do with me. This arrogant rich second-generation heir. The humiliation of having money thrown at her in the past life still haunted her. Her voice carried deep-seated loathing as she said coldly, "George, how many times do I have to tell you? Can you just stay away from me? I really, truly hate the way you cling to me. Neither I nor my mother need your dirty money." I was stunned by Willow's delusions. Even if, according to the barrage, the past me had been deeply in love with her, in this life, we had never even been together. The comments had shown up just in time, before Willow even had the chance to say she needed tuition. All I had done was pull out my black card. I hadn't even said a word about wanting her as my girlfriend. Before this moment, we had never even interacted. She hated the man I was in the past, but the one still trapped in the past was her. I let out a cold laugh. I was just calling the waiter to pay the bill. "Miss Lou, do you suffer from some sort of paranoia? Why do you always assume I'm obsessed with you?" Chapter 5. Willow's face went completely pale. It was only then that she seemed to realize, in this life, we were nothing more than strangers. The 6 years of entanglement from our past life had yet to happen. Realizing this, she stumbled back a few steps. The barrage immediately turned frantic. "Wait, why isn't the second male lead paying for Lou's mother's treatment this time?" "Exactly. Lou's mother has cancer. If the second male lead doesn't give her money, where is the female lead supposed to find that kind of astronomical sum?" Another comment appeared. "Lou's mother is the only source of comfort in the female lead's humiliating life." I frowned as I read through the scrolling comments. So the 6 years I spent throwing money at Willow's feet was what they called a humiliating life. It was her painful past. In the past life, after I paid for her mother's surgery, what I got in return was the two of them conspiring behind my back. I still remembered Lou's mother's words to Willow. "Willow, a woman must be financially independent. You can't rely on a man. Listen to me, you have to make him hand over all his wealth. Let him live under your control. You're so beautiful. a university graduate. With so many men chasing after you, why should you settle for him? You need to make him realize that he is the one who's lucky to have you. Make him willingly hand over everything to you. Willow had nodded in firm agreement. Unfortunately for her, the immense wealth of the Wang family wasn't something an outsider like her could ever touch. The most she could get was whatever crumbs I chose to let slip through my fingers. If she was obedient, I'd give her a little. If she wasn't, she'd get nothing. Did she really think a second-generation heir like me would be stupid enough to hand over my family's fortune? Willow had always envied and craved the wealth of the Wang family, yet she was powerless to claim it. Anna, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. Lou, aren't you the one who's been clinging to George this whole time? He hasn't even looked at you, yet you keep acting like you're some victim being forced into this. Isn't that ridiculous? Willow's lips tightened. Her eyes burned with anger as she snapped. Anna, you're just some country bumpkin. Who do you think you are, speaking to me in that tone? Do you even know who I am? Her voice was arrogant, her tone laced with the kind of superiority that only money could cultivate. It was exactly like the refined, high society persona she had in the past life. After I made her a top-tier celebrity, she became the center of attention wherever she went. Fans worshipped her, praising her to the skies, slowly inflating her ego until she lost all sense of reality. What she hadn't realized yet was that at this moment, even her clothes were cheaper than Anna's. I raised an eyebrow and clapped my hands. Lou makes a good point. Anna looked at me, feeling wronged. I glanced at her outfit. It was plain, cheap. Dressed like this, wasn't she just like a real country bumpkin? I frowned and waved my hand, exuding the full arrogance of a rich heir. How could my girlfriend be wearing such shabby clothes? Anna, come with me to the mall right now, and don't even think about leaving until we spent at least $1 million on new clothes. Walking out of the mall with multiple shopping bags, Anna was still in complete shock. She couldn't seem to wrap her head around what had just happened. I smiled in satisfaction. My girlfriend deserved only the best. Everything I had once given to Willow in the past life, I wouldn't waste a single cent on her in this one. Meanwhile, the barrage was still busy discussing Willow's situation. She was completely overwhelmed by her financial struggles. Tuition, living expenses, her mother's medical bills, all piled up on her shoulders. In the past, Makoto had been her biggest regret, but in this life, after fixing that regret, 20 new regrets had taken its place. On the way back to campus, I casually scrolled through the barrage. Female lead. Please don't go back to the second male lead. I just want to see you and Makoto in a sweet romance. Poor female lead, she's still going to be forced back into the second male lead's grasp. Ugh, is there really no way to escape the second male lead's control, even after being reborn? As I scrolled further, I suddenly paused. At the entrance of the dormitory, Willow was standing alone. She had clearly been waiting for me for a long time. The moment she saw me, she let out a bitter laugh. Then, as if resigning herself to fate, she said, George, I lost. No matter how hard I try, I still can't escape you. Fine, as long as you give me the black card. And promise not to force me into anything, I'll agree to be your girlfriend. Chapter 6. As she spoke, the corners of Willow's eyes were tinged red, her expression desolate. It was as if she had made some immense sacrifice. As if she had suffered a grave insult. Like her dignity was something priceless. Something that could actually measure up to my unlimited black card. I let out a mocking laugh. I had never seen someone so proud while begging. Unable to resist, I reminded her. Miss, do we even know each other? Willow raised her chin and scoffed coldly, her voice steady and unwavering. George, no one knows you better than I do. You think by playing hard to get, I'll suddenly start paying attention to you. Enough. Just hand over the black card. My mother is still waiting in the hospital. Her tone was full of certainty, as if it was obvious that I would give in to her. After all, I had stayed by her side for 6 years in our past life. If it wasn't love, how could I have endured for so long? She had seen me lose my mind for her, had witnessed my bold, extravagant displays of affection. As the one who had always been favored, she had always felt secure in her position. Willow's mother's hospital bills could no longer be delayed. Her world was crumbling around her, and she needed money to patch the cracks. Anna rolled her eyes and shattered Willow's arrogance in an instant. When exactly did George ever say he wanted to be your boyfriend? That single sentence struck like a bolt of lightning. Willow stood frozen in place for a long time. Then, suddenly, she seemed to realize something. I had never actually asked her to be my girlfriend in this life. All those tangled affairs from the past, none of them had happened yet. But just as quickly, she shook her head in denial. 6 years of entanglement had been seared into her bones. Every moment, every memory, there was no way she could believe that I had never loved her. She stared at me, eyes slightly moist. Yet her words still carried that familiar arrogance. Fine, George, I admit that me being with Makoto has upset you, but my mother's situation can't be delayed any longer. Just give me the card, and I'll let the past go." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And the barrage erupted in panic. The female lead finally got her second chance at life. Why is she getting tangled up with the second male lead again? Here it comes, another 6 years of humiliation. Some comments sighed in resignation. But without the second male lead, she's just a college student. Where else is she supposed to get money? I looked at Willow, and as I spoke, my words were not just for her, but also for the barrage. If you don't have money, figure it out yourself. If you don't have a brain, well, you still have a body, don't you? If you really think it through. Wouldn't making money be effortless? Chapter 7. Willow seemed to have had her pride wounded. For an entire month, she didn't appear before me. I still remembered the last words she spat at me before leaving. "George, how long do you plan to keep up this arrogant young master act? Do you have any idea how disgusting you are? As punishment, I won't speak to you again for the next month. Don't even dream of seeing me." The reward came so suddenly, I almost doubted it was real. We were in the same department but different classes, on a vast campus. Running into someone by chance was extremely difficult. With Willow gone, I found myself spending more time with Anna. Every morning, she would obediently wait outside my dorm so we could walk to class together. She even offered to help tidy my room and wash my clothes. Before I could respond, my roommate David immediately cut in. "Young lady, please stop. You two are responsible for romance. I'll take care of the chores." David came from a rough background. After getting into university, his family refused to give him a single cent, forcing him to work construction with his father to make ends meet. He arrived at school alone, carrying his belongings in a worn-out sack. On the first day of college, I had casually offered him 200 yuan per meal to fetch my food. He was so moved that he started calling me Godfather, and enthusiastically took over all dorm duties. By now, I had completely put Willow out of my mind. It was the barrage that occasionally popped up updates about her, trying to remind me of her existence. For example, she had been borrowing money left and right, desperately trying to fill the gaping hole in her finances. But how much money did college students have to lend? A few hundred yuan at best, barely enough to make a dent in her situation. With no money left, she had no choice but to rely on Makoto for food and necessities. The once longed-for romance quickly became full of friction. To save money, Willow, who had never once lifted a finger in her past life, was now working part-time jobs. I thought I would never cross paths with Willow again, but one evening, while taking Anna to the campus cafeteria, I ran into her. I usually only ate at the cafeteria on weekends. Willow, on the other hand, went during the weekdays. Her weekend job provided meals. We were two parallel lines, never meant to meet, but this weekend, those lines unexpectedly intersected. Willow, who should have been off campus, was sitting inside the cafeteria. Something about her had changed when she had just been reborn. She carried the refined elegance that only wealth could cultivate. Now, all that was left on her face was worry. She had lost weight. As Anna and I walked into the cafeteria, fingers intertwined, I spotted Makoto setting down a tray of food in front of Willow. Grinning as he spoke, "Willow, I got the best dish from the cafeteria today. Try it." Excitedly, he arranged the meal in front of her. It was a 7 yuan serving of mass-cooked cafeteria food, oily, bland. From where I stood, I could clearly see the disdain on Willow's face. The barrage flared up. How is the female lead supposed to eat this? Yeah, in her past life, every meal was a luxurious feast. Why is she eating this stuff now? And look at her clothes, they're just cheap, bargain bin outfits. In her past life, she only wore the latest designer brands. Then a new comment appeared, but all of that came from the second male lead. Without him, this was always the life she was meant to have. She simply returned to where she truly belongs. The moment that message appeared, the barrage fell completely silent. They had once said that after getting together with me, Willow never ate cafeteria food again. Every meal was a high-end feast at a fancy restaurant, or fresh sashimi, meticulously plated by the house chef and delivered straight to campus. As for clothes, every week, we would shop at luxury boutiques, leaving with an entire car full of bags. Willow never wore the same outfit twice. She adapted quickly to a life of extravagance. Day after day, she became increasingly picky about food and clothes. Now, suddenly forced back into eating greasy cafeteria food. Of course, she found it unpalatable. Dressed in cheap fabric. Of course, she felt uncomfortable. After hesitating for a long moment, Willow finally set her chopsticks down. Her voice was hesitant as she spoke to Makoto. "Makoto, can I ask you for a favor?" Makoto responded immediately. "What is it?" Willow pursed her lips. "Can you lend me 300,000 yuan? Chapter 8. Makoto nearly choked on a piece of tofu. His voice shot up instinctively as he blurted out, "What did you just say? You're asking me for 300,000 yuan. You've been eating my food, drinking my drinks, hell. You haven't even paid back the 600 yuan you borrowed for meals 2 weeks ago. And now you're asking me for 300,000. Do I look like a damn ATM to you?" The cafeteria fell silent as countless eyes turned toward Willow. Even I couldn't help but click my tongue in amusement. The luxury of her past life had truly spoiled her beyond salvation. Makoto wasn't much better off financially than Willow. Where on earth was he supposed to get 300,000 yuan? Makoto's frustration boiled over. "You think I'm your personal cash machine? Do you even realize that my parents don't even earn 100,000 yuan a year? And yet you think you can just flap your lips and ask for 300,000? What gives you the right? I'm asking you, what gives you the right? You've been swiping my meal card every day at the cafeteria. And yet you still complain that the food isn't good enough. That it can't compare to the fresh seafood you used to eat. Tell me, were you eating that fresh seafood in your dreams?" Willow's face burned bright red. Unable to hold back, she muttered in frustration, "I only ended up like this because of you. In the past, I never had a meal that cost less than 1,000 yuan. The cheapest wine I drank cost at least 100,000 per bottle." Makoto let out a laugh, as if he had just heard the most ridiculous joke. "Willow, do you think I met you yesterday? You're a girl who couldn't even afford her own tuition. And yet you go around daydreaming that you're some rich socialite. Fine dining, luxury goods, are you delusional?" Laughter erupted all around them. That was the moment reality truly hit Willow. She had been reborn for a month, and she had deliberately chosen a different path from her past life. The barrage erupted into a flurry of comments. "What the hell? I came here for a sweet campus romance, not to watch them argue every day." Someone replied, "No money, no romance. What love story are you expecting?" Willow looked aggrieved as she raised her head toward the cafeteria entrance. And then, she saw me. Her expression shifted in an instant. Her tense frown disappeared. A bright, sweet smile spread across her face, and her gaze, it was full of expectation. I walked right past her, without even sparing her a glance. Instead, I took Anna's hand, frowning as I inspected her freshly done nails, the tiny diamonds embedded in them, each barely worth a few thousand yuan. I gritted my teeth. How could Anna keep saving money for me like this? I immediately ordered, "Next time, replace them all with diamonds the size of pigeon eggs." Then, glancing at the cafeteria food, I wrinkled my nose in distaste. "Let's eat off campus." Anna nodded obediently, and with that, I strode out of the cafeteria, not once looking back at Willow. Behind me, I could feel her carefully constructed smile, crumbling into pieces, and just as I stepped outside, she abandoned Makoto and ran after me. "George, why don't you?" The rest of her words caught in her throat. As soon as she spotted the Maserati parked outside, it was impossible to miss. The car was parked right in the middle of the path leading from the cafeteria. Students passing by whispered among themselves. Some gushed in admiration over the luxury car. Others grumbled about how I was so disgustingly rich. Willow let out a quiet scoff. Then, with a knowing smile, she said, "Oh, I see, so this was meant to be a surprise for me, but I don't like such flashy displays. Next time, don't do this again." The barrage came alive again. Wait, wasn't this the exact car the female lead was driving when she crashed in the past life? Yeah, in the previous life, she only got this car after graduation. I can't believe the second male lead took it out early this time. Some loyalists were quick to defend her. Our female lead belongs to the main lead. There's no way she'd be tempted by a mere sports car. Just watch, this is where she slaps George with an epic rejection. And yet, Willow's eyes were glued to the car. She loved it, without a second thought. She reached for the door handle, only to be met with the cold, scathing voice of the driver's seat occupant. "This car belongs to Miss Sue. Why do all these gold diggers keep trying to climb inside?" Chapter 9. Willow's hand froze midair, as if she had been electrocuted. Her brows furrowed slightly, and in an instant, the elegant, high society aura that had faded over the past month seemed to reassemble itself. She spoke with dissatisfaction. "Uncle Martin, this car is mine. Don't you remember? In her past life, this car had belonged to her, but in this life..." I let out a cold laugh, swiftly pulling open the car door and sliding in with Anna. Then, slam. The door shut sharply, just as Willow yanked her hand away at the last second, nearly getting 4 fingers crushed in the process. Through the glass window, I gave her a slow, disdainful once-over before saying, "Willow, you really need to fix this bad habit of yours, always coveting things that don't belong to you. This car is a gift for my girlfriend. What does that have to do with you?" To Willow, I had always been an arrogant, domineering heir. Naturally, my words had to be as sharp as ever, leaving no room for softness. Whatever brief joy had sparked in her eyes just now, shattered completely. Her gaze flickered in panic as she stared at me. She trembled slightly as she muttered, Wasn't this car supposed to be mine? I drove it for 2 whole years in my past life. Her voice was soft, but I heard her crystal clear. She had been reborn for this long. And yet, she was still clinging onto the past. The life she once rejected, the wealth she once scorned. Now, in this timeline, they had become an unattainable mirage. Forever out of reach, the barrage fell into stunned silence before exploding. What the hell? The second male lead really doesn't love the female lead anymore. Did she get reborn for nothing? I came here for a sweet campus romance between the leads. Instead, all I've watched is them arguing 15 times in 2 weeks. I thought we'd get a juicy love-hate battle between the female lead and second male lead, but all I've seen is the female lead getting slapped with reality. Then, a new comment appeared. People kept saying young Master Wong was the one who couldn't let go of Willow. But why does it feel like it's actually her who can't stop chasing after him? I smirked and shifted my gaze away from the scrolling text. I was the only heir of the Wong family, born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had seen everything, experienced everything, no matter how beautiful Willow was. Was she really worth my time? She had always believed that her biggest regret was never being with Makoto in her past life. Well then, this time, I would make sure she fulfilled that regret completely. With a press of my foot, the Maserati shot forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw Makoto fuming, his finger stabbing the air as he shouted at Willow. Willow, on the other hand, simply stood there, staring at the trail of exhaust fumes left behind. Her lips were pressed tightly together. Not saying a word, I looked away, exhaling lazily. Uncle Martin, driving this car on campus is too flashy. If this keeps up, the school administration is going to call me in for a talk. Uncle Martin hurriedly nodded. Understood. Understood. Next time, I'll wait outside the school gates instead. Then, after a pause, he hesitantly added, Young master, since you're still single right now, perhaps tonight, you could reconsider the engagement proposal your father mentioned. With the Su family. Chapter 10. Sitting in the private booth of the bar, I found myself staring at Anna with complicated emotions. On the way here, I had been impatiently brushing off the idea of an arranged marriage. I have no interest in marrying a stranger. Uncle Martin had looked at me in surprise. She's not a stranger. Haven't you been dating Miss Su for a while now? I was speechless. At that moment, Anna gave me an innocent look, trying to play cute and get away with it. In our social circle, arranged marriages were inevitable. Love had nothing to do with it. It was all about business, binding 2 families together, minimizing risks, maximizing power. I glanced at my phone, where my father's WeChat message still sat unread. Son, I'm glad to see you and Miss Su getting along so well. If she's a good fit, get engaged. If not, move on to the next one. Keep going until you find one that satisfies you. At this moment, I truly felt like a typical spoiled rich heir, casually selecting a partner, leading a decadent life. Anna looked at me with a pitiful expression and explained. George, I only dressed plainly because I heard you wanted to experience a romance with a poor college girl. But before I could even do anything, you suddenly shoved a black card into my hands and made me your girlfriend. She said she had applied to the same university as me, hoping to confess a love she had kept hidden for years, but in the end, I had simply sponsored her. The process was different from what she expected, but the result was the same. Anna continued sulking as she said, Also, I never even used the black card you gave me. You didn't tell me the password. I was stunned. Had I really forgotten to give her the password? I hurriedly pushed the black card back toward her, forcing an awkward smile. Take it. Use it as much as you like. The barrage exploded. The comments rolled in so thick that I could barely see the screen. How did the entire plot change so much in this lifetime? I remember this arranged marriage from the past life, but didn't George reject it on the spot, using his girlfriend as an excuse? Wait, isn't the second male lead supposed to love the female lead? Who's still delusional here? George never loved Willow in this life. At that moment, the door to the private booth swung open. A waiter entered, carrying drinks, but the moment our eyes met, the tray slipped from her hands, and alcohol spilled all over the floor. She froze in shock for a moment, then her expression twisted into fury as she snapped, George, why are you alone in a room with another woman? I rubbed my temples. Willow, dressed in the form-fitting uniform of the bar's waitstaff. She stood at the doorway, flushed with embarrassment. The barrage had mentioned that she had found a part-time job, so this was it, serving drinks to bar patrons. Her gaze flickered rapidly between me and Anna, and the next second, she rushed forward and grabbed my arm. Why are you with her? I immediately yanked my arm free, rubbing my forehead in frustration. I snapped, she's my fiancée. Who else would I be with? You. The Wang and Su families had already acknowledged our relationship. Everyone approved of the match. Willow froze at the word fiancé. The dimly lit booth couldn't hide the paleness of her face. For a long time, she stood there in silence. Then, closing her eyes briefly. She let out a bitter laugh. George, I know you're only with her to get back at me. No matter how many times I restart, I still can't escape you. She turned her head away, as if struggling to get the next words out. You win. You really win. I agree. I'll be your girlfriend. Chapter 11. Wait, I interrupted, raising a hand. Did I even ask you anything? And yet here you are, shamelessly agreeing. Willow closed her eyes, as if gathering all the courage in her body. Then, she spoke slowly, deliberately. Do you know, I was reborn. In the past life, you handed me your black card and made me your girlfriend. You gave my mother $1 million for her treatment. Even that Maserati, it was a gift from you. We were together for 6 years. You were arrogant and overbearing, but I endured it all. In the past, I kept thinking about Makoto, but being reborn made me realize the truth about my heart. I love you. She might not have noticed, but in her voice, there was a lingering trace of nostalgia. The barrage fired up immediately. So basically, the female lead suffered a little hardship and started reminiscing about how good the second male lead actually was. Damn, I just realized the second male lead was never a fool. In the past life, he funded her only when she obeyed him, never got manipulated into blindly handing over all his wealth, and never became a full-fledged simp. And in this life, the moment she chose someone else, he moved on. No hesitation, no turning back. That last comment struck me. So the thing that truly bothered Willow from our past life was the fact that I never handed over the Wong family's wealth to her. In her mind, I was supposed to be a pathetic, love-struck fool, kneeling at her feet, begging her to please take everything I had. But I was arrogant, not stupid. Money was meant to show to women, not give to them. I had always understood that. More importantly, all the women truly worthy of standing beside me never needed my money, and yet, Willow had treated it as if it was already hers, and when she couldn't have it, she resented me for it. My father's wealth isn't even mine to touch yet. Did she really think she could reach for it first? The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Anna suddenly stood up, breaking the tension with a casual smirk. I always knew the standard formula for social climbing was a gambling addict father, a terminally ill mother, a younger brother who needed dowry money, and a tragically broken soul. But I never expected that now we'd be competing with reincarnation stories too. She turned toward me, pouting playfully. Wang Ji, my family isn't that miserable. My parents are alive and well, and my little brother is happily studying abroad, and I'm definitely not reincarnated. Do I still have a chance to climb my way up? I chuckled. Of course you do. In the end, Willow was dragged out by security. As they pulled her away, she kept shouting, George, you love me the most. You shouldn't be with someone else. We were together in the past life. We were really together. Once the engagement was settled, both families wasted no time in planning a grand engagement banquet. My father also made arrangements for me to study abroad for a finance degree. He told me, son, now that you're engaged, you can't just laze around in some random university. You need proper financial training. The Wong family's empire will be in your hands one day. I decided to try my luck, shamelessly pushing my luck. Dad, how about a little spending money? Just a small goal. Say, 100 million. His response was immediate. Get lost. I knew it. Even I haven't touched my dad's fortune yet, and Willow thought she could dream about it. On the day of my departure, David practically wept as he clung to my luggage. Young master, how am I supposed to survive without you? I planned to serve you and the young madam until we graduated together. I rolled my eyes. I've paid off your tuition and left you a living allowance. Just stop dressing like a beggar. It's embarrassing for me. He sniffled dramatically before grinning. Godfather, I'll never forget you. Ha ha. I wonder when I'll get to see you again. Ha ha ha. Also, don't worry. I'll pay back the money when I graduate. Ha ha ha. Damn it. Stop crying. The way he was laughing between sobs was seriously grating on my ears. As I stepped onto the plane, the barrage suddenly reignited, flooding my screen. Willow has completely lost it looking for George. Is she looking for her past lover? No, she's looking for her personal ATM. Guys, look, she still remembers George's phone number from the past life. She's trying to call him right now. I glanced down at my phone. I was about to leave the country. That old number. Obviously, it was time for a change. Chapter 12. Willow waited under the boys' dormitory for several days. The hospital bills were overdue. She could no longer delay them. After much thought, she came up with a plan. She would ask George for a loan. Naturally, George would use this opportunity to suggest they get together. After all, in their past life, the moment he found out she couldn't afford her tuition, he had generously pulled out his black card and raised an eyebrow at her. Lou, I can cover your tuition and living expenses, but in return, you have to be my girlfriend. How about it? Willow clenched her fists. This time, if George made the same offer again, she would immediately agree. But after waiting for days, he never appeared. until an impatient David finally told her, "Give it up." George left for overseas studies the day after his engagement to Anna. "He's never coming back." A deafening buzz filled Willow's ears. Engagement. Overseas studies. That didn't happen in the past life. They had spent 6 whole years together, from university, through graduation, maturing along the way. All she did differently this time was choose Makoto first. How? How had everything changed so drastically? With trembling hands, Willow pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. The moment the call connected, a mechanical female voice shattered her thoughts. "Sorry, the number you dialed is no longer in service." Willow froze. George's number is a dead line. She stared at the digits on her screen, double-checking them. There was no mistake. This was the number that had been burned into her memory for 6 years in the past life. And yet, in this life, it had become an empty number. Willow stood motionless for a long time, long enough for Makoto to shove her from behind. "Willow, pay me back." Makoto snarled. "I won't ask for anything else, but you owe me 600 yuan in food expenses. Pay me back, now." His face was contorted with rage, eyes sharp and aggressive. Gone was the gentle boy from their past life. Willow lowered her gaze, saying nothing. If she had still held feelings for Makoto when she was first reborn. Then after more than a month of relentless reality hammering her down, there was only one person left in her heart, George. But now, she had nothing left, only 500 yuan, earned from her part-time job at the bar, not even enough for her mother's hospital fees. Willow had just parted her lips to ask for a little more time when, slap, a woman's hand struck her across the face. "You cheap slut, hurry up and pay my boyfriend back." Willow's mind went blank. George had a fiancé, and now, Makoto had a girlfriend too. Everything around her seemed to be moving at fast-forward speed, leaving her completely behind. Her dazed eyes slowly lifted toward the woman in front of her, and then, miraculously, she recognized her. This was the very same woman who had appeared on Makoto's marriage certificate in the past life. In this life, Makoto had been working multiple jobs because Willow kept demanding money from him, and that had led him to meet his future wife 4 years earlier. Round and round. It all came full circle. Her rebirth. It seemed like it had only served one purpose, to help everyone else find the people they were meant to be with sooner. Chapter 13. Willow wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Unwillingly, she pulled out all the money she had left and handed it over. Makoto let out a relieved sigh before walking away with his girlfriend. Just then, her phone rang. Heart pounding, she snatched it up, only for disappointment to crash over her when she saw it wasn't George's number. She answered begrudgingly. An aged voice, weak but familiar, came through the receiver. "Willow, the hospital is pressing me for the medical bills again. Please think of a way to pay." Frustration surged through her, ripping at her already fragile heart. Every problem she had faced since her rebirth had driven her to exhaustion. She snapped, voice shrill with irritation. "If you don't have money, can't you figure something out yourself? Other people's parents support their children. Why are you always asking me for money? Look at George, his parents give him hundreds of thousands a month for pocket money. And you, what do you give me?" The voice on the other end of the line choked up with quiet sobs, before turning into a bitter lament. "I must be truly cursed to have raised such an ungrateful child. You haven't even visited me in over a month. And you refuse to give me a single cent." Willow hung up, without hesitation. Then, pulling out a shared bike, she pedaled away furiously, trying to convince herself, "George still loves me. He wouldn't just leave without a word. He must be mad that I chose Makoto first." All she had to do was find him, apologize, act cute, and everything would go back to how it was. They would still end up together, as long as she became George's girlfriend. She would never have to worry about money again. George's mansion. She remembered the address clearly. In her past life, she had lived there for 2 years. Every flower and tree was etched into her memory. But in this life, the moment she approached, the estate's butler immediately blocked her path. His expression wary. "This is private property. You can't enter." Desperation bubbled up inside her as she blurted, "I'm George's girlfriend. I lived here for 2 years. Don't you remember me?" The butler looked her up and down. Then, with a mocking snort, he said, "At least do some research before trying to cling onto a rich man. Our young master just got engaged to the eldest Miss Sue. The two of them are studying abroad together." "What girlfriend?" "Engaged. Studying abroad." The blood in Willow's veins turned to ice. "George really left, without even telling me. He really doesn't love me anymore." Her phone rang again, a foreign number. Hope flared in her chest. With trembling fingers, she answered, but the moment she heard the cold, detached voice on the other end, her knees buckled, and she sank helplessly to the ground. "Miss Liu, your mother's treatment has been discontinued due to unpaid fees. Please make the necessary payment immediately." Time passed quickly abroad. Willow faded from my life like an insignificant passerby. She had made a grand entrance, only to disappear just as quietly. Still, I knew exactly what had become of her. The barrage never failed to pop up occasionally, making sure I never forgot her existence. Her so-called true love, her beloved Makoto, had long since dumped her. Makoto, after a long detour, had somehow still ended up meeting and falling in love with his past life wife. Their relationship was thriving. Meanwhile, Willow's mother had died not long after, having never received the necessary treatment, even on her deathbed. She cursed Willow as an unfilial daughter, and so, Willow was left alone. The pampered girl who had once never lifted a finger, now juggled 3 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. Even then, she could barely make ends meet, drowning in debt. By her second year of university, she finally dropped out, the start of an endless cycle of struggling to survive. Yet, even as she worked, she never stopped searching for my whereabouts. Unfortunately for her, I was half a world away. The cost of travel, the price of living in another country, far beyond what her part-time jobs could afford. 4 years later, I had completed my studies abroad, returning to my hometown, H-City. On the first day, I received a call from David. "Young master, our university is hosting a class reunion. Are you coming?" Chapter 14. David had shed his former frail and dull appearance. Now, he was a highly competent professional, gaining experience at one of my domestic subsidiaries. Excited, he rushed forward, grasping my hand exaggeratedly. "Young master, I haven't seen you in years. You're finally back. Young master, why are you frowning? Tell me what's troubling you, and I'll share the burden." I rubbed my temples and said, "The company has business overseas, but at the moment, I can't find the right person for a long-term assignment abroad." David's eyes lit up, and he eagerly volunteered. With a grin, he said, "What a coincidence. I'm the perfect candidate for an overseas posting." That was when I remembered David once told me about his situation. After his parents found out he landed a job at a big company, they started hounding him for money every day. To avoid them, David hadn't returned home for years. Looking at it this way, wasn't he indeed the perfect candidate for an overseas assignment? With my biggest concern resolved, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I hadn't spent much time with my classmates. Among the entire class, the only one I was familiar with was David. Just before the reunion officially started, someone arrived late. She stepped through the door in high heels, carrying an air of weariness and dust from the road. Willow had arrived. Willow and I were from the same department, but not the same class. Her sudden arrival was somewhat unexpected. Curious eyes turned toward her. I almost didn't recognize her. She was now about the same age as when she died in the car accident in my past life. I still remembered the bullet comments on the screen back then. They said she had lived a privileged life in her past life, carrying herself with elegance and grace. Yet now, the woman before me, despite her heavy makeup, could not hide the exhaustion on her face. Bullet comments that had been absent for a long time began to roll in again. Someone commented, "I almost didn't recognize the female lead." The person above, "She's not the female lead anymore. Not even the supporting female character. At best, she's just an extra." Another person added, "It's obvious Willow has it really rough now. It's been nearly 6 years since she was reborn, and she's still chasing a dream of stardom. Always talking about how she used to be a big celebrity. Who would want to hire such a self-entitled diva? And she's still picky about food. Always complaining that she used to eat the finest delicacies. But how much did she have to sacrifice for those? No wonder she's miserable now." I couldn't even imagine how bad things had gotten for her. Maybe, just maybe, she was trapped in a cramped 100 square meter duplex, eating plain 4-dish meals every day, standing by the balcony with a sorrowful expression as she overlooked the bright city skyline. Thinking about it, yeah, she was indeed living a tragic life. Willow hardly dared to look at me, but she still mustered the courage to approach, speaking softly. "George, I heard about your class reunion and that you'd be attending, so I wanted to come see you. Have you been doing well these past years?" Chapter 15. The reunion was filled with people I barely knew. I stood up, politely bid everyone farewell, and walked past Willow to leave. She refused to give up and chased after me. Outside the hotel, heavy rain poured down. I stood at the roadside under my umbrella. Willow, however, stood in the rain. The downpour streamed down her hair, soaking her clothes and blurring the expression on her face. She parted her lips several times before finally speaking. Despite knowing the answer, she still clung to a shred of hope, tentatively asking me, "George, do you still love me?" I turned my head, my expression indifferent, and said, "Miss Liu, perhaps you should think carefully. We never really knew each other, so how could love even be a question?" I thought to myself, just as you wished. In this life, you never accepted that first black card, and I never had any intersection with you. From beginning to end, We were nothing but strangers. As I gave my final answer, a few bullet comments appeared in the sky, but they were growing fainter, a sign that they were about to disappear completely. The comments read, "Actually, young Master Wang was never a simp. Even in the past life, he wasn't foolish enough to give up his core interests. Do you think young Master Wang can guess how Willow is living now?" Someone replied, "He definitely can." Another comment teased, "Phew, that was close. Willow almost ended up living a good life." And finally, one last comment appeared, "In her reborn life, Willow has finally ended up living the life she was always meant to have." Chapter 16. The bullet comments disappeared completely. I could visibly see the despair creeping into Willow's expression. She clutched her head, overwhelmed with pain, and said, "I'm sorry, George. It was my mistake. The moment I was reborn, before you even had a chance to say a single word to me, I had already abandoned our fate. How did it come to this? How did I lose the most important person in my life? George, do you know, I've always wanted to go abroad to find you, but no matter how hard I worked, I could never save enough for a round-trip ticket and 6 months of living expenses overseas. In my past life, this amount of money was nothing more than the price of a bottle of wine. How did it turn out like this?" I couldn't tell whether the liquid running down her face was rain or tears. A pair of headlights flashed toward us. A Maserati pulled up beside me. The car door opened, and Anna stepped out. She leaned in, stood on tiptoe, and gave me a peck on the cheek before glancing behind me in surprise. "George, isn't this the shattered queen who got reborn?" "Oh, the latest update to the social climbing guide now includes playing the pitiful card on rainy days." She lowered her lashes, pouting playfully. "George, I don't have a tragic backstory or a rebirth narrative, but I can play the poor, helpless girl if needed. In my past life, Willow had eagerly pushed away the black card I once offered her. That very rejection had paved the way for the incredible fate I now shared with Anna." I chuckled and teased, "You don't need to act pitiful to rise to the top." Chapter 17. Side Story, Willow. I learned about George's wedding through the news. I was curled up in a cramped attic just big enough to fit a bed, aimlessly scrolling through my phone. Around me were crumpled tissues, used contraceptive wrappers, and empty boxes of junk food. The kind of cheap, greasy food I wouldn't have even glanced at in my past life had now become my daily sustenance. Suddenly, George's bright smile appeared on my screen. He was still the same confident young Master Wang, exuding an effortless grace in every gesture. The news spelled it out clearly. He was about to marry Miss Sue, the eldest daughter of the Sue family. Their second joint business venture was also about to be launched. I stared at George's smiling face, dazed. We were from different worlds. A single meal for him cost more than what I could save from years of hard work. In the bustling streets of H City, our paths would likely never cross again. The most devastating part? The fact that if I wanted to know anything about him, I had to rely on the news. Over the years since my rebirth, I had tried my hand at acting again. I sought out the same directors who had admired me in my past life. One by one, they all turned me away without hesitation. Only one of them, after hearing me claim that if he cast me in a film, it was guaranteed to be a hit, impatiently pointed me toward the truth. "Miss Liu, this movie will be a success no matter who I cast. So, tell me, why should I choose you?" In that moment, everything became painfully clear. In my past life, my rise to fame had been effortless, not because of my talent, but because I had the Wang family behind me, because George had paved the way for me. And how had I repaid him? I had armored myself with thorns at every turn, desperately trying to hide my own weaknesses, while I wallowed in my supposed grievances. Had he not been the one silently protecting my dignity? I took one last glance at the news of George's wedding. A single thought surfaced in my mind. I had to find him. I had to stop him from marrying someone else. The idea sent a spark through me, lighting up my world. Maybe, just maybe, he would suddenly remember me. Maybe, just maybe, he would suddenly fall in love with me again. Maybe, we could return to the way things were in our past life. Chapter 18. Side Story, Willow. I borrowed Sister Ting's car, cramped and suffocating, nowhere near as comfortable as the Maserati I once had in my past life. The image of that Maserati flashed through my mind for a split second, and my heart trembled. This scene, today, felt eerily familiar. In my past life, I had stood on the balcony of the Wang family's villa when I learned through our classmates' group chat that Makoto was getting married. I had felt the same way back then. I had jumped into my car and sped down the road with only one thought in my mind. I had to stop Makoto's wedding. Instinctively, I glanced at the time, March 18th, the same day Makoto had gotten married in my past life, the same day George was getting married in this life. A chilling sensation spread through my entire body. Bang. A single moment of distraction, just a few seconds, and the car veered off course, slamming into the guardrail. As I lost consciousness, a faint chuckle escaped my lips. If I could be reborn again at 18, The very first thing I would do when I opened my eyes would be to accept the black card George offered me, and when he asked if I was willing to be his girlfriend, I would shout without hesitation, "George, I do." Chapter 19, Side Story, Willow. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a stark white ceiling. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled my nose. I struggled to sit up. There was no George, no school. I grabbed the doctor beside me, my voice urgent. "Doctor, did I get reborn? What day is it today?" The doctor gave me a complicated look, then turned to the nurse behind him. "Take her for another CT scan." She hit her head on the steering wheel. There could be a hematoma causing confusion. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the smooth surface of the medical equipment. It was me, the version of me that I despised. I looked away in disappointment and picked up the cracked phone beside me. The news of George's wedding was everywhere, reposted across the entire internet. People marveled at the extravagance of the century's grandest wedding. How every detail screamed luxury and wealth. What moved them even more was the rare sight of true love within a marriage of elites. During George's years studying abroad, he had met with his fiancée at least once every month, without fail. The stack of plane tickets accumulated over time had become a testament to their love. I put my phone down, feeling empty. George was married. Makoto was married too, to the same woman he had married in my past life. Only I remained, left behind, lost, without a clue of where to go. On the day of my discharge, I unexpectedly ran into George at the hospital. He was holding his wife close, his eyes full of tenderness, leaning against the wall for support. My body trembled as I mustered the courage to step forward and call out, "George." He turned around. I held my breath, my heart pounding. I was terrified of blinking, afraid to miss even the slightest flicker of recognition in his expression. But his gaze merely lingered on me for a moment, curious, puzzled, before he turned away again. He didn't recognize me. Tears blurred my vision. Once, we had loved each other for 6 years. For 6 years, he had given me a life of luxury. And now, I was the only one left who remembered.